Welcome to another episode of your Daily Dose of Science. My name is Stephen Schnell and I'm the Executive Director down here at the Science Zone in beautiful Casper, Wyoming. Now, you're in for a pretty big dose of science today as we have some fun with rockets. Now, not just any kind of rockets, but air pressure rockets, specifically using like a bike pump and a launching platform and a 2-liter bottle. Now, we've done this outside at outreach events and in parks before, and it looks a little something like this. We've got this water bottle on our launching pad. We'll go ahead and add some air pressure to our system here and let her rip. Next, let's see what happens when we try to launch a little bit larger bottle. We'll add some air. I wonder if this one will go any higher than the last one. Now, we'll try adding a little bit of water to our 2-liter bottle this time to see if we can get it to fly even further. And 3, 2, 1, blast off! Now, I'm a huge fan of science, and I love to hear from experts. And I just happen to know a local astrophysicist who can help us explain a little more about what's going on here. Dr. Andrew Young. Dr. Young, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, sure thing. Happy to help out.
So I will start off with just a simple first question, and that is, can you tell me about what's going on here, about what the science is behind what makes this bottle fly up into the air?
All right. So the basic principles behind rocketry is that you have a chamber that has pressurized gas, and the gas is allowed to go one way, and your vehicle goes the other way.
Does the shape of the bottle have any impact on its flight or trajectory or how far it'll go?
So when we talk about the physics of flight or the physics of rocketry, there are 4 main forces that act on a rocket. The 4 forces are thrust, drag, lift, and weight. And so the thrust comes from the air coming out of the air of the water of the 2-liter bottle. And so now the drag is basically another word for saying air friction. And so your bottle is going through the air, it's going to encounter friction, and we call that drag. Now, as most people will know in watching rockets or any type of rocketry, anything in action of such, you basically have to have the rocket go through the air as if it was going through, through water. You want to have a nice aerodynamic profile. You don't want a flying brick going through the air because that'll cause a lot of drag. And so what you really want to do is taper the end, and so that'll cut through the air like a hot knife through butter. And so the shape of the rocket helps reduce the amount of drag, reduce the amount of air friction, and that way you can have a lot more of your thrust moving the rocket a lot more easily.
So I did this a couple of times where I used just air, and then I also filled it up with about halfway full of water. And what impact does the addition of water have on the flight of the rocket?
So in order to answer the question, let's take a look at Newton's laws. And so Newton's laws are basically the governing principles behind rocketry motion. And so Newton himself codified these laws into a book in the late 1600s, and his 3 Newton's laws consist of the following. The first law is that an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force, or an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. So right now, your 2-liter bottle is at rest. It's going to stay at rest until we decide to do something with it, apply force to make it move. But right now, it's at rest, which is nice. The second law states that force is equal to mass times acceleration. And so mass is defined as the amount of stuff that it has, and acceleration is defined as the change in velocity. So right now, it has 0 velocity. It is not going anywhere. But eventually, you're going to pump it up with a lot of air, and it's going to start to move. It's going to have a velocity. And by having a velocity, it went from 0 to 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, whatever that value is, it now has an acceleration. It now has a force applied to it, and it is now moving. Newton's third law states that for every force, you have an equal and opposite force. Now, the same principle applies for your 2-liter bottle. Initially, you have a bunch of air in it, and now 2-liter bottle moves off, one way after the air goes out the other way. Now you add in a wrinkle. What happens when you add the water in there? Well, the water in itself has a lot more mass than air. So now the air, in order to get outside, is pushing through the water, so now the water has to go outside. Well, the water is going out one way, the 2-liter bottle is definitely going out the other way as well. So in all likelihood, by adding just a little bit of water, you're going to allow the 2-liter bottle to have more thrust going the other way than you would have just by air alone. Now, let me just take this to a different logical assessment. If you fill the entire 2-liter bottle with water, then chances are it probably won't go anywhere, because now you have too much mass, not enough compressed air, and doesn't want to go anywhere. Right. So as an experiment for your viewers, if they have such a contraption at home, is to actually try the 2-liter bottle with maybe a quarter amount of water, and then half amount of water, and then 3/4 amount of water, and then entirely fill the water. And let them try to gauge a difference in how high it goes based on how much water they add in. And that's an experiment they can try over and over again to see what the optimal amount of water is to add in, so that you still have enough thrust to push it up high, but not too much mass that it stays stuck in the ground.
So what would your hypothesis be as to what the optimal amount of water is for this rocket?
That's a good question. So I'll state, as a scientist, first off, I don't know the exact correct answer. Sure. But if I had to make a hypothesis, a sort of a guess, just throw it out there, maybe about a quarter. But I can be proven wrong, and I'm ready to be wrong, and I'm ready to adjust as needed.
Sure.
Yeah, and when we take this extension to real rockets, now real rockets themselves aren't filled with compressed air and water and stuff. Basically, what they have for their fuel is a combination of liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen. And measured in the correct proportions and allowed to explode in a controlled manner, they will definitely propel rockets to farther and farther distances out of Earth's atmosphere into space and beyond.
So we've got a pretty blunt end right here. I know in the past we've made some, and this one obviously has been well used, and the nose cone has been kind of destroyed. How much of a difference for something like this do you feel that adding fins or a nose cone will actually make?
So the fins serve a purpose in helping to stabilize the rocket. And so you don't want this thing go spinning out. You want to have some measure of control. So the fins act as stabilizers to help maintain that sense of control. The nose, again, helps with the profile as it cuts through the air. And if you don't want to use the entire 2-liter bottle, you could, if you wanted to, make a sort of a quick cardboard cutout and place it on top of the 2-liter bottle. Or take that 2-liter bottle, cut it in half, put half of it on top of there, and put the nose parts, the nozzle part on top, and then just sort of shape it so that it has a better profile.
So we've got, kind of the sleek, sides of the rocket here. How do you feel adding a rubber duck to the bottle will affect its flight?
Well, you're adding more mass in there, so it will not go as far. You're also distorting the aerodynamic profile, so now you're counting more drag. But I'm more than happy to sacrifice as many ducks as we need to in order to make sure that we have a viable experiment.
Fantastic. Oh, man. Dr. Young, thank you so much for being a part of our Daily Dose of Science. I really, really appreciate your time and your expertise and you sharing it with us.
So again, thank you very much for having me on the Science Zone. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to your community about the nature of science and rocketry, and I hope everything goes well and safe launching, and stay safe and be well in this uncertain times.
Thanks again, Dr. Young. Well, he's really got me thinking about how we could take this to the next level. And it just so happens we have an entire science museum here at our disposal. And I've always wanted to try and launch these rockets horizontally through our space on some sort of trolley system. Well, follow me to the drawing board. We need to start with some sort of a tall post for us to launch to. Of course, we need to give it a nice and sturdy base, complete with supports. Now for our launch pad, we'll need to build something for our rocket launcher to rest on. And as we launch from far away, we'll need to be sure we've got a large target to aim for. Then we'll string a long cable between them, attach our trolley and rocket, and now it's time to launch. Well, it looks like I've got to get busy building. Join us next time for Rockets Round 2 as we launch inside the Science Zone. Have a great day and stay curious out there.
If you enjoyed today's content and would like it to continue, please consider joining these generous supporters of the Science Zone and our virtual engagement platform by clicking the donate button here or on our website. Thank you.